So I just want to spend a bit of time just talking about some of the myths that exist around the pre-owned marketplace, as well as around some of the myths that exist around how technology works. So the first thing that one of the biggest myths that we come across throughout our time is that older hardware fails more often. So if I keep older hardware in place for longer, I'm going to see more issues, more outages. And that's going to mean, potential kind of risk to my business. And let me just talk one anecdote that I can share with you. So we used to manage a business which had about 16,000 assets under support, and every quarter I'd have to deliver some of the results back to them around the number of outages across those devices. Not in one single instance across those 16,000 assets could we illustrate where there were more failures due to the age of devices. But if you want, you can look into something independent of that, which is something called the bathtub curve. And this talks about the number of failures essentially over time. So it's a well-known engineering curve. If you look it up on Wikipedia, this is not something that we created, but it talks about number of failures as devices age, and the reason it's called a bathtub curve is it looks similar to a bathtub. But the interesting point to that is the highest number of failures essentially is when that device is brand new, when that comes straight out of the box, or when that device is essentially burning in. So what happens when you put a brand new device into production? All of the capacitors, everything gets up to speed, things start to expand, and where things haven't been rolled out properly within the manufacturing process, you start to get the cracks and the creaks in that, and that's what we call early infant mortality failure rate. So that's where you might start to see some of the early failures. But essentially, once that product then burns in, it then gets to something called MTBF, which stands for mean time between failure. Now, what's interesting is if you can look at all of the mean time between failure in Cisco as an example in the data sheet. If you look to the back of the data sheet, you'll see that it's listed there. The challenge is it's listed in hours, so quite often people can't make a calculation between number of hours and number of days. On average, something like a switch is something like 260,000 hours. I'm no sort of mathematician, so I can't necessarily figure that out as to what it means into days or years, but 260,000 hours is about 26 years. So the potential for failure during the life of that product is anywhere between 0 to 26 years. So the reason I think that we see that in years and not, listed in hours and not years, is why would you only allow me to keep a product in place for say 3 to 5 years versus 7 to 10 years if the mean time between failure is less than 26 years. So have a look at that. Google bathtub curve. You'll see that. Have a look at the mean time between failure of the product that you're looking at, embarking, or the product that you have in place. But we know as a fact that older hardware does not fail. There's no evidence to suggest that it will fail more often than newer products. The second part of it, one of the myths, is around support. That actually, if you buy things outside of the channel, that product can not go under support. So that is true. If you buy a product from outside of the channel, I had a customer, a large mining client, that just recently went and bought something off of eBay to fix a problem. They went to put that device onto their maintenance contract, and what they found is that device, that supervisor, had an existing contract on it, and therefore the support was rejected from it. This is why one of the reasons why you have to go to a credible source when you're talking to people about buying outside of the channel, because we need to make sure that serial number has been vetted to make sure it doesn't have an existing contract within it. So do factor that in mind, because it is important. The third part is around the use of third-party products. So Cisco, as an example, would say that you can't use third-party components within the device, or it might invalidate the contract. That is their policy, and it's not the law. The law on this is actually the Magnuson Act, which supersedes some of their policy, which suggests that you can use any third-party components. However, what it states within their contract is if the optic is causing the issue, they may withhold support. And that word is important, they may withhold support. What a number of organisations do with us is they keep a genuine one in place, and they'll swap that one out to resolve the issue with TAC if TAC are pushing back on you and saying that they won't support. And the last one that we'll talk about is the reliability. So one of the myths that we hear, if you buy a second-hand product, that there's more potential for that device to fail. That's actually the complete opposite. So what we find within the manufacturing process is the manufacturers spot check around 1 in 100 units. We don't know the exact numbers. So therefore, there's 99 units which have not gone through any type of test. We test 100% of the units that pass through us, and we put them into a production environment. So we'll put live traffic across them to make sure that the devices fully perform, so that they're actually within this mean time between failure period. Again, versus the OEMs, but one out of potentially 100 that would do that. And what we do to verify that and to back that up and to give you confidence and assurance is that we'll back that up with a warranty which says if that device fails, we'll replace it for free for life, for the lifetime that you have that product in place. So it's important to talk about some of these myths, because again, if I'm in the space of wanting you to buy from the OEMs, then I'm obviously going to drive you towards buying from our channel. However, what we see is they are really just urban myths. But do reach out to us if you need any of these explaining in any sort of greater detail, or if you need some of the facts around it, because it's important that you know what is typically cited is policy and not the law. And that you are completely within your remit to work with any of these type of discrepancies. So feel free to reach out to us if we can help explain any of those in any more detail.